Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I'm your host, Al Richards. We have a really good show for you guys, and some of you guys who have been watching the shows and seeing normally my living room in the background. I'm advancing. I'm learning technology. That is what's so great. That's a blessing of us going through and looking for another studio. I'm learning some new things. And as you can see, I've got my logo in the back. So thumbs up for me today, guys. Hey, we've got this guest that I met at the Rally for Life up at the state capitol probably a couple months ago. And it's Liz, and Liz is the director of the Utah Substance Use and Mental Health Advisory. And when Liz got up there and spoke, what she spoke about resonated with me so much. And my wife was sitting next to me, and I looked at her, and it's so funny because about the time I looked at her, my wife looked at me and goes, "You need to have her on your show." And I was like, yes, that's what I was just getting ready to say. So anyway, Liz, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us.
Well, thank you so much. And Al, you said you advanced, and I've got my living room behind me. So, we do what we can, right? But
That's it. Well, your living room is much nicer because we just live in a tiny little apartment. And if my wife's here, a lot of times you can see the TV running in the background.
it all works.
It does.
My name is Liz Kelch, or Elizabeth Kelch. I am the director for the Utah Substance Use and Mental Health Advisory Council, which is part of the advisory council that advises the government, the state government, so our legislators, the governor and his office, which is always a fun thing. And we are also a public outreach for mostly the policy side of everything behavioral health. So substance use and mental health when it comes to state government, a little bit of federal government, and we oversee some of the federal grants that are received and the state grants that go out to the public. So it's a great position. I love where I work, and I work with wonderful people, and I get to meet all of the wonderful people, just like you, Al. It was really fun to be with you at
Thank
the
you.
rally.
That's just one of the things I love about doing this. We've been doing this podcast now for a little over 2 years. Actually, last month was 2 years. And I
Congratulations.
tell people all the time, thank you. And I tell people all the time, I am blessed every single week to either be in the studio or be on a Zoom call with some of the most amazing individuals I have ever met in my life. And my wife and I were very spiritual. And it's crazy where God has put us on this different path. Because if you would ask me 3 years ago if I'd be doing a podcast about addiction, I'd be going to recovery events and all kinds of stuff. I'd be like, yeah, you're freaking crazy. No way. And now here I am in the addiction recovery realm community. And I am so flippin' blessed that I am.
I agree with you completely. I actually came into this position a little bit by happenstance. So I got a master's in public administration, and which is a great tool. I intended to use it very differently. And I ended up looking into local government and found a job at the Utah Association of Counties. And the need that they had at the moment was administration for the behavioral health committee. That's what they call it, the Utah Behavioral Health Committee. I was there for a long time. I should know what it was called. Anyways, and I thought, sure, I can do behavioral health. Sure, why not? And I jumped in with 2 feet and have never looked back. I've really found my calling when it comes to these issues because I have seen over the last 10 years how this has grown, how we can better serve the people around us and our friends, our family, our neighbors, and our friends that we have yet to meet. And so I really understand how life takes some funny turns, maybe, but we land in a great place. And I feel the exact same way. This is just amazing that I get to do this on a daily basis.
Yeah. And how long ago did you get started doing this again?
So worked at I worked with the Utah Association of Counties with their behavioral health committee for 8 years. And then I've been in this position for 3 years, a little over 3 years.
Wow. And I bet it's gone by really quick, right?
Oh, I feel like I'm brand new. I still feel like I'm the new kid on the block and if you know, well, of course, you know, when you work in this realm, people come and serve because they're passionate. They understand the importance of these issues. And so I love that about that because people stay in this sector. They understand the need, they know how to serve, and they continue to serve because they feel so passionate about it. And so I'm just feeding off, but I do still feel like the new kid because I walk in and people have 30, 40 years of experience. And I think I really am the new kid still. But yeah, I've been in this industry for 11 years. So
Wow.
I work primarily on the policy side, on the government side. I made the transition to state government to USAVE about 3 years ago and maybe your listeners have heard her name, Mary Lou Emerson, who was
Oh yeah, I know Mary Lou.
everybody does. She is, I can't sing her praises enough. She left big shoes for me to fill. She retired and I was lucky enough to come into this position. So everybody loves Mary Lou, right?
Well, now Mary Lou's working for USARA, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's how I met her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
So
was on our show 2 months ago, 3 it took us a while to get her because her schedule is so busy, and I was so happy when we finally got her scheduled, and we just had an incredible time on the show. She's an amazing woman. My wife loves her to death. Well, everyone loves her to death, right? Why how can you not love Mary Lou?
yeah. So that was kind of my path. And as I mentioned, it's been a wonderful one because I've learned so much about others and especially about myself. I mean, this has been a pathway of self-discovery for me, which was really interesting because I didn't think that. I thought I was just going for a job, but this has been a pathway of self-discovery. I've learned a lot.
I would have to say ditto to that, Liz, because it's been the same way with me, right? That was
Mhm.
one of the reasons for us starting the podcast because I never looked at myself as an addict. I
Yeah.
didn't because my usage of cocaine and alcohol was only Fridays and Saturdays. That's it.
Right.
Not during the week because I was dedicated to my job and I wanted to make sure I had a clear head. I was working in manufacturing around high speed machinery and things, and I needed to focus. However, I did it for 8 years and I lost my job because of it.
Yeah.
So I was an addict, right? And then when my wife went through her alcoholism, I did so many things wrong as a spouse.
Mhm.
Why don't you just stop? Because I just did, right? I just
Right.
said, I'm done. And I stopped. I didn't go to any rehabs, didn't ever do any kind of detox. It was just that way for me. I was expecting it to be that way for her
Mhm.
and everyone else and not realizing that was not the case and making the same mistakes for 7 years, 8 years with the same outcome. I mean, talk about being a slow learner. My gosh, I was really slow.
It's so personal, and that's what I see. And when we talk about policy, we're always talking about fixes for everybody. You know, the state of Utah, we're going to reach as many people as possible. But what we have learned and what we know best is that this is individual. Everybody is dealing with different things and everything comes up differently. Everybody treats it differently. Everybody has a different threshold. Some people have to hit rock bottom, some people don't. And you have to figure that out individually before you can have the people around you help, right? And it's so important to recognize that and to find enough solutions. That's my goal as the on the policy side is how do we find a solution that helps the most amount of people, but everybody at their individual level? What can we do that can reach people where they need to be and continue to, because we also know that I know that addiction is something that has to be addressed constantly. Recovery is ongoing. We recover until the end, right?
Right.
But what can we do to make sure that we can meet those people at every single stage, at every single level?
Yeah.
It's difficult because behavioral health is so behind. When we talk about mental health and substance use disorder treatment, I mean, we're ages behind physical health treatment, right? It's just assumed that we will be able to go to the doctor, and we're seeing such need in behavioral health. People are recognizing the need. We just need to catch up as an industry. So those are some of the main goals that I have. You know, we're finally getting rid of the stigma. We're finally talking about this on an everyday level. We got to get the treatment options, the recovery options, prevention options at the same level.
And what you just spoke about, Liz, is like one of the missions too on the other side of addiction is one of our missions is to get rid of that stigma, right? We push very hard. I mention it quite a bit in our shows, in our past shows, and I will continue to do it. I'm actually working on a TED Talks that is all about stigma. That's what I want my TED Talks to be, is the stigma. And the reason what gave me the idea is my wife and I went to a neighborhood protest last summer,
Mhm.
and they were bringing in a sober living into a neighborhood in West Jordan. That's where I grew up. You know, my parents moved out there when I was 9, and I was like a Tom Sawyer, shooting BB gun bows, playing in the canals, just having fun. And being involved with the Chamber of Commerce, I've gotten to know all the mayors and a lot of the city council and things. And we go to this protest, and I tell you what, Liz, it was like, do you remember or have you ever seen the old Frankenstein movie? You
Yeah.
know, like that was made back in the 1940s or 50s. And,
Right.
you know, the town is coming after Frankenstein, and they've got their pitchforks and their torches, and they're ready to hang the guy, and they just want to kill him because he's a monster, and they don't know anything about this individual.
Mhm.
That's what it was like.
Yeah.
And I was just in awe, and it was triggering my wife so bad. She's like, "Babe, I need to leave. We had our vehicle parked around the site, and she left because it was triggering her so bad." And the Mayor Dirk Burton of West Jordan, asked if I'd like to get up and talk, and I said, "Absolutely."
Mhm.
And I went off, not meaning to, but I went off in a very I don't know, in a polite way, but I was really speaking my mind and letting the individuals out there know, you don't understand. And one lady says, "Well, I've worked at AP&P and I see what kind of individuals come through this door." And I'm like, "So you're already judging them before do you even know these people?
Right.
Do you know their past? Do you know their history?" Right? So the stigma is one. And then you mentioned something else, the families.
Mhm.
I am now a firm believer that when a loved one goes in recovery, the family needs to go into recovery as well. Because if that person gets out of recovery and goes back into the environment of people like myself in the past who don't know anything about addiction, we're going to throw the same daggers at them, right?
Right. Right.
And what does that do to them? It takes away everything that they're trying to build.
I'm so glad you mentioned USARA before, because I think some of those programs that they have that are family based, you know, or friends based, and have an opportunity to discuss things. That's why we need those so desperately, is because that it is a community importance, coming around an individual, but also coming around each other so that everybody can better work together and address how they're going to move forward. We're looking at the future. We're not going to focus on the past, but we're going to move forward and we're going to have a better understanding. We're going to know the resources so that if anything does happen, because it probably is, we can address it and not shift all the way back to the beginning. We're moving forward. And I think that's so important. I'm jumping around. I apologize, Al.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
One of the things that I think is so important that I've seen change at the government level is that we have moved forward little by little. When I first walked into the legislative session 11 years ago, it wasn't a topic that people were ready to talk about. Mental health was kind of there, you know, but substance use was really difficult for individuals, for our politicians, our elected officials to talk about, because it held such a stigma. But I've seen, and this is why I feel so strongly about now you're going to get my not version of a TED Talk, because it's not
Okay.
that long. But my TED Talk about how people need to get involved in the political system and speak out in their communities and volunteer. I love to hear that you are so involved on the side of commerce and everything, because when we have voices, we change that so rapidly that it really makes a difference. And so when I first, as I was saying, when I first got up there, elected officials, they would say, well, is it about mental health or is it about substance use? And so they work together. Everything always works together. And that's why we talk about behavioral health now, is because you're talking about your mental capacity. It always is going to, you're either self-medicating or you're dealing with trauma or whatever it is. They work together. But now everybody understands, and you'll hear elected officials talk about how this is affecting them, how it's affecting their families, how it's affecting their neighbors, their best friends. They speak openly about it. And so this is the perfect opportunity to bring in our examples of how we are being affected and how this is having an impact. And my job is to be a resource to everyone and say, this is how you participate. This is how you give your input on a bill that will have an impact on your community or have an impact on you. And you can tell your elected official who you elected, hopefully, that you have an opinion and they will listen. I feel very, very strongly that legislators really want to hear from their constituents, because that's their job. They take an oath and say that they're representing their areas. And when they do that, they are waiting to hear from people like us and hear and say, this is why it matters to our community. This is what happens. And when they get enough voices, it makes a difference, and they change their minds. I've seen legislators go from one end to the other because they hear that compelling story. They love data and facts and everything else. That's part of the state government's job, is to put that all together. But it drives it home when it's stories from their constituents. And so I love that. And I feel so strongly that everybody should know that they have an impact. And when it comes out that this thing is going to happen, you know, whether it be taxes or whatever it may be, an expansion of services, and they think, oh, that's going to have an impact on me, they can speak on that. And that is the one thing I like about government. I know people often feel powerless when it comes to interacting with their legislators. And I want to tell you that it's the opposite. If you are a constituent, if you talk to a legislator and you say, I live in your area, you go to the front of the line. You go in front of all of us state employees. You go in front of all the lobbyists. They are going to listen to you, and they're going to count you as something as important and not as an unknown voice. But anyways, that's my soapbox.
No, and I'm glad that you got on that soapbox, seriously. And thank you for sharing all that, because again, we do on this, right? The majority of the community do feel like they don't have a voice, that no one is going to listen. And I think it's easier for us as humans to fall into the victim state, right? Instead of the fighting state. Let's go after what we believe in.
Yeah.
And I think that's what even shocked me when I got up and spoke when the mayor asked me to. And I didn't even know where it came from. I mean, I had people coming up to me afterwards, and there was a few people there that was even from USARA come up and they went, "Oh my gosh, where the heck did that come from?" I'm like, "I don't know, but it came out." And I actually took a class at USARA about 2 months ago. Evans was doing the class, and he was teaching us how we can get up there to speak,
Mhm.
and how to do it formally, not being rude and ignorant and being forceful, but to also get our opinion out there, hopefully that someone will listen.
And it means something. I mean, we see bad legislation come through all the time, and I say bad because it's serving the opposite need. And there, if we have a concerted effort, if we are able to spread the word, if people engage, it shows a difference, because not every, I think, going back to the very beginning, it's passion, right?
Yeah.
When we show passion about something, when we show passion about our recovery, when we show passion about what we can do, um, it's infectious and it spreads to other people. And just as Evan taught, if it's done respectfully and it's done appropriately, it has such an impact that that passion spreads, and people hear the message and then they internalize the message. I feel like this is an area, a recovery and prevention and treatment are so important, that when our passion spreads to somebody else, it becomes their passion and they learn. I've seen that with legislators. Speaking of Representative Dunnigan, Jim Dunnigan, he wasn't one that I would have thought originally, and he has become a champion who really understands and is now working. He works in the correction system and volunteers his time and efforts because of that. He's a great example of somebody who, once you see it and you understand the passion and you start working in it, you can't help but keep going and keep working. And that's what my career path has been. So it's been wonderful.
That is so cool. Yeah, it's definitely a very, very neat thing to be doing. And I'm hoping in the near future that this could also be my full-time job, right? Because I want to do shows every single day. I've had the honor and the privilege to interview people from the UK, from Canada, all around the US. Brianne Davis, my third show. I don't know how this happens, but she is a Hollywood movie star, Brianne Davis.
Yeah.
And I reached out to her on Instagram. She goes, "Yeah, I'd love to be on your show." And she talked about her love and sex addiction. It's not drugs and alcohol, but it's still an addiction. The brain works the exact same way as it does with any other addiction.
Yeah.
And it's like you talked about finding your why and your passion, and this is my passion and my why, and my wife loves it because I get very emotional at times, and even when I do my public speaking, we just got done doing the Healing Utah Success Summit this past Saturday in Sandy. It's our second one. We did our first one in St. George last August, and I get up there and I start shedding tears because I do feel it right here, right? Just like you were talking about Jim, he kind of changed, and the passion is so deep, and my wife loves it. And I do my best to joke with the audience and go, if any of you guys are judging me because I'm up here crying, it's okay, because my wife thinks I'm sexy when I cry. And I usually get usually pretty good laugh out of that, but but it's when it's from your heart, people can sense it and they see it. That's having even these shows, I get sometimes teary-eyed, and it's because the passion is there, and you can see the passion in yourself, Liz, that I mean, you're gung ho. You're just not, well, this is what I do. You can see a lot of passion behind it. And we need individuals like yourself to help us, right? To help us make a change.
Well, and thank you. I appreciate that because I do try. I do feel so passionately, and I see that. I think especially when you start to feel so passionately, you start seeing it around you, right?
Yeah.
And so I hear all of these messages, and when we talk, we've I've already said, this works hand in hand with mental health, and the governor, he feels so strongly about mental health. It's one of his main messages. First Lady Abby Cox, it's one of her huge messages as mental health for our students. And so it's one of those things that I keep saying, okay, and we're going to talk about how people address this. And so we start talking about substance use disorders and addiction and everything else. And I see my world all start to meld together, and it all becomes about, what I'm passionate about. And so I think this is such a wonderful way to do it. And I see it in government, and people don't always think that. They think, well, this is restricting me, or these are the issues, or government's the problem. But I see an opportunity that I can work and help to further it further with all other people that feel the same way and are passionate about it. We've done a lot to address with the crisis teams and the MCOT teams, the mobile crisis outreach teams, and the receiving centers and everything like that. We're seeing ways that we can help people. And what I love about that effort is that people, it was used as a resource to begin with for law enforcement or for people in authority to bring people. It's turning into people coming themselves and saying, I want to skip somebody in authority dragging me in here. I'm coming in to help address something by myself. I don't need somebody else to tell me. I want to help myself. And I see that as the way that government should really work, right? We offer the things, people can tell people that this is an option. Maybe they have to see it originally from somebody higher up coming in and making them do that. But in the end, it's self-directed. People want to engage and help themselves, and they're going to be able to do that as long as we provide those resources. And I have to compliment the governor and the legislators and our elected officials all the way down to our municipal level, our city and our town folks, who really put in the effort and say, okay, this is a priority for us, and we're going to make it a priority. And they put the resources in. So but it all comes down to that individual saying, I'm going to be my best advocate. I'm going to help myself. And then the community builds around them. And friends and family come and say, okay, we're going to support. And the government level is going to come around and say, here are the resources that we can provide to help lift. And I think it's an amazing thing. Just gets higher and higher, keep getting better.
Well, and that's exactly what we need, right? It's stuff isn't going to happen overnight, and people need to realize that. However, if you continue to keep working at it, I mean, you've said already, just in the 3 years that you've been doing this, 11 total, right? That you're seeing changes already starting to happen, and individuals who didn't see it the way that they're even seeing it now. So people are starting to open their minds and their eyes.
And I know it's not fast enough. It's never fast enough. But government, it is slow, but we're getting there. And I also see a different change when it comes to generational change. You see the younger generations. I've finally accepted I'm middle-aged, but there's some young legislator. One guy came in, just a baby. But anyways, the younger generations are willing to talk about it because they've grown up with that, and there's a larger discussion for them. Resources like you, Al, that podcasts that talk about it and open the mind, and it's the educational process and sharing and our stories and everything else. They're jumping in 2 feet. So it's gonna skyrocket here. And I'm super excited about how that's gonna look. So I just feel, but that only could happen with the efforts of the people that came before them, that are willing to share their stories, that are willing to keep going and aren't afraid, which fear is such a hard thing to overcome. I listened to a couple of your episodes, and I loved that message of overcoming. And one of those things that we overcome is fear. I have to overcome it when
Yeah.
we let the passion get through and we kind of manage our fear.
And I'm glad that you brought the word up, fear, and I guess you've heard it in some of the shows. If it's something that literally scares you and you have a fear about, for me, I'm just saying this is my belief and beliefs of a lot of the people that I hang with, because I hang with only positive outlook type people. If you're negative, you're out of my circle. I don't want you in my circle. I'll still love you, but I don't want you in my circle.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a fear, that is your number one reason to do it.
Yeah.
Because again, and I'm not talking religion, again, I'm talking spiritual. Fear is the devil's greatest playground, right? And the reason why I say that, I read the book, Napoleon Hill wrote the book back in, I think, 1934, and it was called Outwitting the Devil.
Mm.
And his wife swore that as long as she was alive, that book was not going to be published because they were going to be the laughing stock of everyone, right? When you read this book, or if you listen to it, listening to it will bring goosebumps. Napoleon Hill asked the devil if he was afraid of religion. And the devil chuckled and laughed and said, Religion? Religion is my greatest ally. And Napoleon Hill says, Your ally? How can religion be your greatest ally? And he goes, Because religion teaches people to fear me. And that is one of my greatest strengths. And that stuck with me so much when I read that. So again, people that are listening, if something scares you, do it.
Right.
No matter, even if you're up there. I remember the first time I got up to speak, I was winning an award at an event in West Jordan. It was a volunteer award. I was picked to win a volunteer award, and I remember up there behind the podium, and I could feel my slacks hitting the side of my legs because I was shaking so flipping bad because I'm in front of like 200 people. Now I just jump up there and talk, right? It's like it's no big deal, but I got that fear over with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that that's something that holds people back from engaging in the political process, that, well, it's really hard to get up and speak, and we're making efforts to make it more available. People can testify through Zoom, and they can, they have to post when they're having the meeting, what they're talking about, those kinds of things. But it is a very personal thing to talk about your own story in front of legislators and know that it's going to be public for everybody. But I will just say that it has such an impact, and the more you do it, the more it becomes second nature, right, Al? We
Yeah.
get up now and we can talk about anything kind of anytime. And it's through a lot of practice. It was not my goal ever to be able to talk in front of large groups of people, but I can do it now. So
Yeah.
I love that about fear, and what you said about fear. I don't love of fear,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I love what you said about fear, and I'm going to look up that book.
Yeah. Yeah. Please do. It's the what do they call it? The Audible. That is really good because the guy who does the Napoleon Hill voice sounds really good, but the guy that does the devil sounds just, and a lot of people really, even to this day, really do believe Napoleon Hill actually interviewed him. And you will probably think that yourself, because I know I did, and a lot of other people that have read it. And it's because of the questions and the way the answers come back. I mean, I've scratched my head going, how did Napoleon Hill? I don't understand how he had these answers for this, right? So that's why his wife said, as long as I'm alive, I don't even think that book was published till almost like 1980 something before it was actually published. Because while she was alive, she said, And then, of course, the people bought the Napoleon Hill Institute, and they had to go through some things to actually make this book public. But it's a really, really good book. Oh my gosh! So, something I want to share. I want to share a soapbox with you that I have, or a pet peeve, and I just kind of like your input on it a little bit. You know Dave DeRocher, right, from the Other Side Academy. Phenomenal, phenomenal guy. He's the one that helped me say, Al, stop telling your wife's story and start telling yours. You'll be more powerful. And when you give that man permission to speak openly to you, you better be ready, because he will give it to you, right? And I love and respect that about him, because I'm the same way. I speak my mind, and I don't do it to hurt anyone's feelings. I just want you to know where I stand. When my wife has been working her butt off so hard to push that monster that she's been battling with in the corner, right, and doing her best to get on with life, and I'm not taking credit here, because it was a plethora of people, but when we did our Healing Utah Success Summit last year in St. George, my wife was so inspired. On the way home, driving back to Salt Lake, she said, babe, I can't find a job in accounts payable anymore because of my past record, right? She'd been doing it for 17, 18 years. She goes, I am now inspired. I want to become a certified peer support specialist. And she called up Tiffany Nacarado, who works with USARA. We're very, very good friends with Tiffany. And Tiffany said, Janan, do it. Yes. And so she had to fill out the application. And the state accepts her application. She goes through the week's worth of training at USARA. She takes the test. She passed the test. A couple weeks later, she even called me and sent me a text, and she's like, babe, look, I got my certificate. I mean, she's so proud of herself, which she should be. It's a huge accomplishment. She's all excited. Today I'm going to apply for this place and this place and this place and this place. I mean, she's talking so fast I can't even keep up. And she's all excited. I'm so happy and for her to see this excitement. One after another, goes to an interview, would like to hire you, but you have a background. Sorry. Would love to hire you, but we get state funding. So because the state funds us, they tell us we can't hire you. Yep. And this went on and on and on. I started slowly but surely watching her be up here, starting to fall back. And I started getting scared, right? Because I'm going, uh-oh, she is slipping backwards really, really fast here. Is she going to start hitting the bottle again? And so I'm starting to get triggered, and it's scaring me. And I remember I brought it up to Mayor Mendenhall, because she was on our show, and she's like, Al, I'd love to talk to you about that, but that's state, not state. But I kind of understand what you're talking about, However, I'm like, something needs to change, and I'm just as guilty, Liz. You go downtown, you see the addicts. I've said it myself. Get your act together, get off the streets, do something with your life. Now that I'm in the recovery community, I see all these people who have busted their butts to get their lives back and to build relationships back and have their family or their kids or their spouse, whatever it may be. But then we don't allow them that opportunity. We don't give them the opportunity. So what do? They go right back to what they know, because why change?
Right. The only person that is being recognized is the one that they put in the past. And so why not be that person, right? I absolutely agree with you that this is a problem. And it's a problem that we're addressing at the policy level, but it's slow. And I'm not quite sure. We are great with saying now that people, this is an addiction problem. This is a brain disorder. This needs healthcare. It does not need incarceration. We're good at saying that now. Not always in practice, and that's slowly but surely improving. But when people are recovered, and this is why I think that the work that's being done at USARA and the voices that we hear are so important. Why aren't we recognizing that recovery? Why? And so with the problems that happen at the state level with state funding and everything, there are bills that are out there. And this is why I think it's important for people to come up and speak on these things, because you know that the other side already has their voice, their mouthpieces when it comes to these issues. People are saying, well, you know, it's a little scary, right, to hire somebody that has a background. But we know that these people bring their passion, just like your wife, and their experience, and it applies so much to the issue that's at hand. It only feeds them to be better.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're talking about right now is the issues. I'm sorry, Al, I talk with my hands too.
No, well, I've been doing the same thing, so please don't apologize.
When we're talking about licensure at the state level, there's an Office of Professional Licensing Review. And guess what they chose to start with? Of all the licenses they could have talked about, CDLs, they could have talked about, you know, the certifications for all of the different things. They started with behavioral health workforce. So they started with social workers, psychologists, the marriage and family therapists, licensed clinical social work or clinical mental health counselors, peer support specialists, SUDSI, our substance use disorder counselors. It's where they started. Because of the need that we have, we're in a critical shortage. We cannot get people into this professional field fast enough.
Yeah. And
the other thing that they recognized is that people need training, they need support. And the question always comes up, well, what happens if they start using again? Well, we understand that it's a continuum, that we're always working. Recovery is an ongoing process. And if there are appropriate supports, just like people that have regular jobs, my job, you know, I get training on appropriate leadership practices. I get training on, you know, workplace safety. All these things happen. And if the appropriate supports are in place for people like that, they can work in any situation. We know that people need training, they need supervision, they need support, they need peer support, and a peer support counselor is no different. So allow for that to happen, build that into the process, and it will work. And so the state and federal, unfortunately, some of them are federal restrictions that are in place, can go away, and we can run bills and we can talk about how to change that process. We're doing that. It's a bill that Representative Marsha Judkins has run for 3 years, and it needs to pass. And it did pass this last year in a very limited scope. So it's state employees in very specific situations. It needs to be more expansive, and it needs to lend to the private side and the commercial side, right? I will recognize right now, there are some companies that are really doing it right. And so on our applications, our job applications, we all know that there's a box that says, have you ever, and you have to check, right? Mm-hmm. Intermountain Healthcare no longer has a box. They are, yes, and it's great. If there is some, they still reserve the right to run a background check. And this is why I think the other part of it, it's so important that we spread awareness about the efforts that Representative Dunnigan made on, and Senator Weiler and others have made on expungement process, because that is such an important tool to recognizing and completing that cycle of, let's get it off your record. If it's not important, if it's not something that's going to hinder you, let's get it off your record.
Yeah.
And make it so it's an easier process. But Intermountain still reserves the right to run that background check, and you still reserve the right to address it in your interview, but you're not going to be automatically refused because you checked a box. Never makes sense. And so I'm proud of them. They're doing it, and they're doing the right thing. And other companies are following, because when some of those big ones start to understand and recognize the process, the smaller are going to fall behind, and the other bigger ones are going to fall behind. And they're going to understand that this is the best way to approach every single person, and recognize that they're going to come with history, but that's not going to define them. It's their future that we're going to look at. So the state, it's slowly changing out. And I recognize that it's a huge, it's almost like a slap in the face to people that, like your wife, that have done the work, have found the passion, they know what they want to do, and they're being told no because their passion is coming from the exact same area of why the state is saying no. It doesn't make any sense. But these are some of the things that we can do, and some of the things on the policy side that we can do to make that change. I would just encourage everybody that listens to this podcast or has that question to never give up, because you're going to find the right situation. And I hope your wife found it. If not, I've got some suggestions. But but companies are starting to recognize that. And it goes back to what we started talking about before.
Yeah.
One person recognized this is not the way we should be treating these people. So why even have a box? Let's have a conversation, bring them in for an interview, but nobody should be denied at the outset because they checked that one little box. And that spread, and it changed to an entire company policy, which is really exciting. So
that is so good to hear, and yeah, and at least, sit down and find out what the history is, right? It's when I spoke at that neighborhood protest, I made a comment. We all have skeletons in our closet, every single one of us. And if you say no, basically, I will look at you and call BS on it, because we do, right? We've all made bad choices in our life, and that's exactly what they were. And I've recently found out the United States is the only country where, when someone goes through incarceration or has a record and they pay their fines or do time or whatever it may be, community service, once it's done, it's completely wiped off. Not us. We hold that over their heads the rest of their lives. We're not given individual. Now, granted, there are some who definitely don't belong in society, right? There are some people out there that just want to do harm to other individuals. However, we're talking someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's mom, someone's dad. These are individuals who other people love and care about. And it's hard for us to see them destroy themselves because of not having the opportunities. Yeah. And, my wife had a violation of a protection order, and I'm the one that filed the protection order on her. And I'm the one that went to court to have it pulled. However, it's on her record.
Yeah.
And they don't know. They're like, nope, you violated a protection order. You're bad. We don't want you as an employee because you'll cause issues with our other employees, because look what you did. Not realizing the whole reason behind it, right? So she has that label on her forehead before she even has a chance to do anything.
And what's so frustrating for me is that I know exactly why you did it. I know why you filed it,
Yeah.
but sad that that's the lever that you had to pull, because in an ideal situation, you wouldn't have had to gotten to that point. It would have been something else. And so we need to figure out the right levers to the right thing. You were trying to protect her. I shouldn't make assumptions, but my assumption is you're trying to
Yeah.
protect her because you
To
loved her.
her and protect me, right? Because I was getting to a point where, like, my lady cop friend from West Jordan told me, Al, you're going to end up being in handcuffs because what you're telling me, you're starting to go over the edge, right?
Right. So it was done out of love and looking for the future. So how do we get the right resources and the right tools so that it doesn't hinder your wife trying to look for a job? Or how can we address it in the back end? And like you said, once the debt is paid, once we've figured out what our debt to society is and it's been paid, how do we move forward and not have it on our record to continue to hurt us for the rest of our life?
Yeah.
And so I believe strongly in expungement. I think that everyone should do it, even your juvie records, everything that if you don't think they can see it, they probably can. And so I feel strongly, if you are eligible, get the resources that are there. There's an excellent opportunity where the costs are being waived right now. So
Clean Slate Utah is doing, Destiny Garcia and them are doing a phenomenal job.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that you can have the opportunity and those doors aren't shut before they they really should be, right? They need, every door is wide open, and there's so many things though that need to be discussed and can be discussed in person, right? That's what a job interview is for. You get to sit down face to face and you get to decide. This weird soapbox I'm going to get on now. You decide if you're right for that job, right? We're
Yeah.
always thinking we have to please the person interviewing us, but it's an opportunity to figure out, is this the right thing for me? And if they reject you outright, you don't even get that chance to show them who you are and to decide if that's the right fit. So
Yep.
I hope more companies follow the example of Intermountain and others. I hope we can continue that work. It's going to take good voices like yours, Al, and your wife's, and other people to continue to push the issue, but also to support when our legislators bring forward good ideas like that. So
Amen.
Marsha Judkins, we're going to keep running that bell.
There we go. I love it. Well, we've been almost an hour already, and I'm sure you've got a really busy schedule. And there's just a few more things I want to touch base on. But I also, I use the but. That's a word I'm working on getting rid of in my vocabulary. I don't want that in my vocabulary, and I'm working really hard. I'm getting better. But again, but see, I've used it all my life, so
I know.
I got to work harder.
All my professional, friends, they always say and I'm like, oh yeah, right. We can say and instead.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of words that I've gotten rid of. The hate that's not in my vocabulary. Try, that one's almost completely gone. The but I'm still working on, especially as I'm working on being more of a well-known public speaker. I'm working on the ums and the so's and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
I want to give you an opportunity as well here before we leave to talk about more of the resources that you guys offer. Okay. And I'll make sure when the show does come out and post that I put your guys' website on there. I've also got the suicide crisis lifeline that I want to make sure I put on there. One other last little soapbox thing that I have, and we don't have to talk about this very long, or you don't even have to elaborate on it if you don't want to. My good friend Dave DeRocher, I believe you know him as well. He brought this up to me once when he was a guest on our show, and I've really started thinking more and more about it. The Other Side Academy is an organization that's completely free for any individual who says, I'm tired of living the life I'm living. It's a 2.5 year commitment, but by golly, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to make a change in my life. Red Barn Academy in Farmington, they just sponsored, they were our main sponsor at our event we just had this Saturday. Same type of program. There is Natsu, who's in Tooele, who I believe is the only recovery center here in Utah that takes Medicaid. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is that they just take Medicaid. One thing that is really that I'd also like to see a change on, and this has to happen nationally. Why are we leaving our loved ones' lives in the hands of insurance companies? Why is it that they decide whether they stay in recovery for 30, 60, 90, even 6 months? My wife stayed in recovery in a recovery center once for 6 months. While she's there, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's getting it. She's great. Within a couple of weeks out of being out, she was right back on the bottle again. However, they determine. I've got a friend who was in a recovery center down in St. George, and they came back after a little community thing, and she comes back and all her bags are sitting outside the door. And they come up with a reason why they kicked her out. She later found out the insurance company didn't want to pay anymore. Why is it the insurance company's decision how long someone stays? Because they know nothing about recovery. Nothing.
Yeah. I don't have all the answers to this one. This
I
is
didn't think you would, but
ongoing.
I wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, no, but sorry, I used the but. One of the things that we can do is education and understanding and having clear voices about how this is harmful. These are harmful practices. They think, oh, it doesn't matter. Absolutely, it matters. It is hurting the people that we love. One of the things that is so important is that we base everything on science, and this is definitely not one of those quack science things anymore. You know, we're talking back in the 20s and 30s, maybe. Yeah, people didn't understand how this works. We have ways to look at the brain to understand what it takes for people to retrain their brains. And it is not going to happen on a 30-day schedule. So you can say 30, 60, 90, doesn't matter. This becomes a negotiation about money, about resources and what insurance is willing to pay, et cetera. It can change. And we need to, as a community, advocate for appropriate resources going forward based on evidence-based research and the science behind actual addiction and recovery and everything else. And then the message gets through finally. I'm not quite sure why it's taken so long and why this is the big lever that never seems to change, but except for that we have some very strong lobbyists and we have some very strong voices. But again, this is an area where I've seen the change. Representative Dunnigan, who is based in insurance, also became our strongest advocate for Medicaid and expanding Medicaid to targeted adult Medicaid populations that needed the most help, and it has the best benefit plan for those people, a year of covered services. That's one lever that's been pulled. It now needs to spread to all the others. And Utah has led out with the targeted adult Medicaid program. So that's not even nationwide. You know, you go to another state, that's not going to be a resource. But now let's push it to the private insurances, because a year is still may not be enough. But we understand that at least begins to retrain the brain when we talk about addiction, when we talk about substance use, when we talk about mental health, and working all of those together because we're talking about the trauma that comes with it. So I'm not saying the year is the perfect answer either when it comes to science and evidence-based research, but we know that it's a lot better than 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. And so we continue to work, and I'm with you, Al. I think that's the next big thing. We need some reform when it comes to insurance, when it comes to those covered services, actual parity. We quote unquote have parity for mental health. What about substance use? What about all of the other issues? And what does it really look like? Make sure that insurance companies, I have a diabetic husband, a type 1 diabetic. Do you know what's funny? They ask every year if he still wants to be on the diabetic plan. And he's like, yep, hasn't gone away. Should be the same question for people suffering from substance use disorders. Do you still want to participate in our substance use disorder plan, or, you know, advance coverage for these issues? Absolutely. But it should be on the list, and it's not. So
Amen. Amen. Well, my gosh, Liz, thank you so much for your time. This has just been an absolute pleasure, and you're just a lovely lady and very smart. And thank you for being a voice, you know, for so many people, and being an advocate and going after something that you have a passion about, because you really do have to have a passion to be in that type of position, right? Because it's like people who work. When my wife's mom was at a care center when she was coming to the end of her life, it takes a special person to work there, you know, and I know I would not be able to do it. However, I really tip my hat off to those that do it, because again, to me, they're special, because it takes heart and love for other individuals. And I think the more of us that show love for one another, instead of being so quick at placing a label on them and not understanding who they are as a person, we could still, all of us can make such a change in so many different ways, just not into the addiction realm, but in just in life in general. If we just start loving one another, and you know, you have different beliefs than I have different beliefs, but that doesn't make you a person who I see right here in front of me today, right? It's just your belief. And if you look at the word belief, the word lie is in there. So maybe our beliefs are a bunch of lies. We don't know, right? We just go after what we think is true. So okay, oh, did you have something?
nope, I was just
Okay.
going to say, for anybody listening, I really encourage you to, Al, you have my contact information. I'd love to share that, because we really are meant to be an advisory council to, like I said, the governor and the governor's office and the legislature, but we're supposed to be bringing the voices of everyone. I have a very large council, and it's meant for a reason, and it's supposed to encapsulate everybody. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll give you all of the information so that you can share it, but please be involved if you can. I understand that sometimes it's not possible. But if you feel strongly about it, if you have the passion, if anybody has a question, please ask me. I hold regular meetings. It's an open meeting, so anybody's willing or able to join if they're interested and to speak at a given time. And it's how government should work. People should be able to raise their voice. So
Yeah. And I was just getting ready to ask you to please share the information that you guys do, because you guys do so much. You have services, you have information about treatment, recovery resources, gosh, suicide and crisis. You guys have a lot of programs. So if you guys go on to sumh.utah.gov, is that correct? You'll be able to see everything that these guys offer. And just like Liz said, dang it, people, use your voice. your voice is the most powerful thing that you can use to make a change, because I was at the gym one morning and the stigma type thing, and I was even thinking, I wish somebody would do something about this. And I had to stop and go, well, I'm somebody. I can flip and do it just like someone else can, right? So guys, put your fear away to the side and use that voice, because Liz has said it throughout this whole podcast. Literally, she has. I don't even know if she's realized it. Your voice is so flippin' important, and get out there. And I will have, if you guys want to, please watch the show. All of Liz's information will be on there. We'll make sure it's there. And I'd love to be invited or go up there to one of your little things just to be a part of it and just to kind of check it out, because this is just what I want to do. I've thrown myself in it, and I told my wife I was going to put 100% of my effort this year into building this podcast, building the speaking career, getting myself out there even more, and joining hands with other people to make a change.
Oh, you asked for it, Al. You just wait.
All right.
I got an avalanche for you.
All right. All right. I guess I better get the lifeline and hang on real tight, right? Liz, is there one last message you'd like to share with our listeners? Do you have just kind of anything that is just you want to get out there? Throw a punch at them.
Well, obviously, I've said it a lot, but I also see so much value in everything that in the stories that everyone is able to share, that we're able to share as a community. There's so much that can be learned and so much that can be felt when it comes to our stories. And so it's important and it's valued and it's seen, even if you don't feel like it is. And my story is one where I lost my best friend to suicide, who was also self-medicating. And the thing that I regret the most is that I don't think she felt like she was seen. And I saw her and I love her. I still do. Can't help it. I always will. And I don't want to help it because she is such an important person to me. And she helped build my passion. And so I want to say that to everyone. You're seen. We see you. I see you. And let's help everyone else see you. The important people that you think maybe don't see you, or you don't think want to see you, they do. And it's important.
I love it. You just gave me the title of this show. You are seen.
It's true.
Yeah, you are definitely seen. Liz, again, thank you so much again for your time, and I do hope that we have an opportunity to see one another again, or maybe work on. I don't know. All I know is whichever direction my eyes, my higher power is God. Wherever direction He takes me, I gave my life over to Him a couple of years ago, and I couldn't do anything for my wife. I'm like, I just seem to screw things up. So I'm letting go of the steering wheel, just take care of things, and I'll do my best to listen and follow. Guys, again, thank you to all our listeners, all our guests like Liz, all our guest co-hosts, which we haven't had one for a while because of the studio change. But guys, still thank you for the past studio or special guest co-hosts. Thank you to all our listeners, all our many sponsors who have made this flipping possible. None of this would be possible if it wasn't for you guys believing in what we're doing and loving us and caring for us. Resilience Talk Network, thank you guys. Thank you, Brad, Mason, everyone who works behind the scenes to make these shows good shows. Even though the last few have kind of been on me, which they're not as good as Brad and Mason's. However, I am learning. There's the positive out of it. And guys, we're going to leave you with this as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.